What's up guys, this is Michael Goffrin here with some more content for you. So today I want to go over how I learned to code, and hopefully that can help you in figuring out how you end up learning how to code. So I started to code really more intensely when I was in college, but I did a little bit in high school too. And it wasn't really much, it was just that I wanted to put in the equations for math formulas into my calculator. So I wrote really simple programming, a program that just basically computed the quadratic formula and the slope equation. What I have to say is that it doesn't really matter if you start super early in programming. You should never feel that intimidated by other people that are starting super early. Like, if you never start, you'll never become a programmer. So I highly encourage you to all learn at your own pace. It doesn't matter if you start even like after college, if you want to have a career shift, because there's so many opportunities to do that now with programming boot camps, online master's degrees, and just like learning programming on your own and then just applying to companies. There's so many ways to become a programmer, and it doesn't matter if you have like a traditional background or not. So I ended up in college studying CS, and the thing about college is that it doesn't really teach you practical programming. I remember my first programming class in college was basically a professor had a programming language, and he wanted us all to use that programming language for all of his projects. In this case, the programming language was this garbage programming language. It was called Meta. It was based off of another garbage programming language that was super old that nobody was using, and we all had to use it. And that's what really sucks, is a lot of the times you end up getting stuck with these kinds of useless programming languages that aren't really being used to build projects that aren't ever going to see the light in some college courses, and I really disliked that. I think that's one of the main difficulties with traditional learning, is that a lot of the times it's not super practical in terms of what you're learning. Instead, what we should be teaching is things like web development, iOS development, data analysis, machine learning, these kinds of things that have real practical jobs backing them. So, yeah, after that I took a couple other courses in CS, but really what helped me was learning how to program on my own. So I ended up, spring quarter of my freshman year, taking one less class just to focus on learning programming on my own. And to do that, I took an online course on iOS development, and from there it was an online course from Stanford. It was basically iOS development, and it went over iOS 7, I think, and Objective-C, how to build an iOS app. So I ended up building a small card matching app from that course, and afterwards I ended up building a couple of my own apps. So one of my apps that I built was this panorama image stitching app. So you take a bunch of photos, and then it would stitch them all into a single composite panorama image. And then I built another app which was basically a photo handler. So you would take a photo, and then you would set a timer, and then it would delete those photos. The idea here being that you sometimes run out of space on your camera, on your phone. The idea being here that you would sometimes run out of space on your phone, so naturally you want to make sure that you can delete any photos that aren't necessary. So neither of those apps became super popular, but the thing is I learned so much about programming from them. And that's really what it's about, is learning. When you building your own projects and stuff, that's when you're learning a lot more than if you are taking some arbitrary course that doesn't really have anything related to like programming. It's really when you have that creative flexibility and you have to have a problem and you have to try to solve it. Because that's what you're doing on a day-to-day job. So, fast forward a little bit more, when I was a sophomore I ended up going to San Francisco, and I ended up studying at a programming boot camp. And for those who don't know, it's basically a place where a bunch of people that are interested in learning about programming come together and they learn about programming. Usually, most of them are focused on full-stack web development, but there are like other types. And this was a cool opportunity for me. I was still in college, so and learning CS, so I didn't really have that much to lose. But a lot of people there were actually like, pivoting from different career tracks. So some of them were, I think one of them worked in the opera actually, and ended up deciding to become a programmer. Another one just was doing manual labor and decided to become a programmer. And the interesting thing was to see how all of them were able to eventually become programmers. And that, I think, was really remarkable to me, and it stresses an idea that I've always thought, which is anyone can learn to code. It's just that you have to have the right approach to doing it. So there I learned a lot more about full stack web development, and it was all learning from how the front end works all the way to the back end, how to pipe data between them, and what it would take to build a full web application. My previous applications, my iOS apps, were always client-side focused, so it was really interesting to see how it would work when you have a backend that you have to pipe data to. So from that I learned a lot, especially when it came to algorithms and data structures. So even though we learned a little bit about data structures and algorithms, I didn't feel like very comfortable about what types of problems I would be asked from like a Google or a Facebook or these kinds of companies. When I got the chance to study at this programming bootcamp, I learned so much about what these companies are looking for. I realized that they're all looking for, how to reverse a linked list, or like find a node in a binary tree that shouldn't be there. Like these kinds of algorithm data structure questions that aren't really practical programming problems per se, but they're used to weed out people that don't know about them. And that really helped me for future endeavors. Like, you have to know how to interview if you want to become a programmer. So from that, I learned a lot about, programming full-stack web development apps, and I also learned about how to interview for programming, which was invaluable. So after that, I ended up coming back to college. I studied programming for a little bit longer, just a lot of different courses. I took some algorithms courses, some parallel programming courses, and I was going to graduate, and I didn't really have like a concrete plan lined up. So one of my friends, he had been running a company in South Korea, a startup that was basically teaching people to program, and he ended up hiring me after I graduated. So I ended up moving there, working as basically an instructor as well as a course content creator. So I worked on helping develop the course content, building out our course curriculum website, teaching students algorithms and data structures, and all this stuff. And it really emphasized to me the idea that anyone can learn, because so many of the people there didn't come from a traditional background. But I look back at them now, and they're all doing programming or had done programming for a little bit of time. So to see that anyone can really become a programmer, it's just been something that's been ingrained in my mind. It's like, it's not something special. You don't have to do it from when you're in elementary school. So during that time, I got a chance to sort of work on a real system that a lot of people were using, and I also learned a lot more about the interview process. I ended up leaving that job later because I wanted to move to California, where all of the interesting tech was happening. So I left, I came back to California, and I moved in with my friend from college, and it was just the two of us in a single room with 2 beds, and there was like no space in between, and we were paying like $1,800 because it was ridiculously expensive in San Francisco. From then, I just studied programming like every day for like half a month while I was also interviewing at companies. So, I would study for like 5 or 6 hours a day if I had no interview scheduled, and then the next day if I had like an on-site, I would do that, and then maybe study an hour or 2 more afterwards. And it was just a constant struggle of studying, mostly checking out like LeetCode, cracking the coding interview, reading about system design, watching YouTube videos on system design, and all of this together in order to learn sort of what it takes to build a concrete system, programming, and how to get an offer. And after doing this for like a month, a little over a month and a half, I think it was like November, and I ended up getting a bunch of offers. So I got like 8 offers from different companies, and I was comparing them, figuring out what I wanted to do, and ultimately I decided to join Facebook, and I've been there ever since. So when I joined, I ended up working on Instagram, and I sort of shifted from full-stack web development back to iOS development, which is what I do currently. So I work on the Instagram iOS app, and yeah, that's pretty much been my career trajectory. I think the important thing to realize is that it doesn't really matter how early you start as long as you start. I started sort of in college, and I saw so many successful programmers, so many good programmers actually didn't even start until after college. It's just about the effort that you put in, your willingness to learn, and the drive that you have to do that. So, thank you guys for listening. Hope to see you soon. Take care.